you there when the guy ran into the glass at the bar? This guy's like trash, right? And he thinks he sees like an avenue out, so he's trying to outrun security. Runs right into the window.
You sure this wasn't you?
I think it wasn't me.
Hello and welcome back to Dodger Debate. I'm Jack Harris, the LA Times' Dodger beat writer, along with our own 1-2 rotation punch of columnists, Bill Plaschke and Dylan Hernández. Guys, happy October. Are we getting nostalgic? Are there any October memories you guys like reliving this time of year?
I think for Dodger fans, it's just been a nightmare the last 2 years. All I can think of is sweep and no runs and Mookie Betts doing terrible. I mean, I think Dodger fans just have, as do I, have terrible memories right now. I'm going through PTSD. I think the Gaslight District in San Diego is a sewer.
It's an interesting place. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got to keep in mind, you and I are just old now, right? Because that's basically, it's a giant like frat house. And we're basically, you and I are the old guys at the club, so to speak. I mean, I literally was the old guy at the club a couple of years ago.
I feel that way.
All right. So the Dodgers are off this week. They'll open the NLDS on Saturday at Dodger Stadium. They will either be playing the San Diego Padres or the Atlanta Braves. I'm not even going to bother to ask you guys like which team you'd rather face if you were the Dodgers, considering one of them had the best record in the second half of the season and the other is without the Cy Young winner and basically only made the playoffs because the Mets stopped trying in game 2 of that doubleheader on Monday. But how does the whole bracket just kind of shape up to you for the Dodgers right now? Like, obviously you could have a tough DS matchup, but they also have home field advantage. They're going to have the scheduling advantage of, not having to play a wild card series and being able to line up their pitching the right way. Just how easy or difficult or daunting does this path look as we enter the postseason?
I think it's a fairly straightforward path. I don't want to say easy, but it's one they should navigate. They should beat San Diego with home field advantage. Then they got to go play Philadelphia, and that's where the whole thing goes off the rails. I think we're still headed for NLCS against the Phillies. And I still think the Phillies are a better team, but the Dodgers do have home field advantage, so that's huge there.
I think you kind of look at this, right? If it is San Diego, I mean, what's kind of tough here is, right? I mean, what you like is that they're playing in this wild card series. It's going to kind of throw their pitching off, But assuming Darvish doesn't have to come in relief in game 3, they're able to kind of throw him at the Dodgers. He's historically had some success against the Dodgers. I think this is pretty tough, And frankly, I mean, now going into last week, Padres came to town 3 games back. I kind of thought like, man, this could get a little interesting here, right? They needed Ohtani to really be Superman in those games to win. Obviously, you still do have Ohtani. Again, there's no reason to think at this point that he's not going to be able to perform. But, if they can kind of neutralize him somehow, to me, this is a pretty tough one. I think, and I think if you're the Dodgers, you're definitely looking at this hoping Atlanta can kind of take care of business there, because if Sale were healthy, I'm not sure you necessarily want the Braves, right? I mean, having a guy that can just pretty much like automatically win is a huge advantage at this time of the year. But just given their health issues, I think you're definitely hoping, for Atlanta to come out on top here.
Yeah, this is why I think, if you're going to face the Padres as the Dodgers, I think you'd almost rather have it happen in the DS. For as good as the Padres are, especially on the pitching side, I don't know if they have one of those automatic win guys, right? So in a 5-game series where losing one of those games like that is really tough, I think that shapes up better. I think the fact just starting the postseason against the Padres, like it would be the complete opposite of 2 years ago where the Dodgers were almost looking past them. Like I think that the way that they played that series last week against the Padres to win the division was a really good indicator that, okay, if they do face San Diego again, they're not going to have the intensity problem. They're not going to have the focus problem that has plagued them in that rivalry at times. And also, teams that have faced the Dodgers before, right? It's like, hey, if we're going to get the Dodgers, let's get them in a 5-game series because that's easier to win. I think it's almost the same thing with the Padres. Like the Padres have been the best team in baseball in the second half of the season. So if you're going to face them, you'd almost rather face them in a shorter series where, the bullpen advantage isn't quite as big, where you just need a couple, like one good start from Jack Flaherty and Yamamoto, and you might be set up to win. So, and then if you get to the CS, like you don't have to go to Philly. You have home field advantage there. If you get the Mets or the Brewers, like you should have the talent advantage there. So facing the Padres in the first round would be really tough. But I think if you had to kind of pick the way this set up, I wouldn't be too upset if I was the Dodgers. And I think, if you want to get into the narrative of it all, there's a good redemption arc if you face the Padres right away in a postseason where, this one's going to be about trying to avoid what's happened the last couple of years. And I think that would just be kind of a narratively interesting matchup for them to face.
Mookie Betts I think he's 2 for 25 the last 2 postseasons. I believe that's correct, isn't it? He's been terrible. Freddie's hurt. I think the Dodgers, they can beat the Padres because in a short series, Ohtani can win a short series for you. Ohtani alone can win a short series for you. And I think that gives them the advantage over the Padres. And I agree with you on the intensity. There's no way they're going to get caught sleeping on this one. There's no way they're going to be considered the Padres the underdog. They're going to think the Padres as the big dogs. They're going to be trying. They're going to have a chip on their shoulder. I just think the Dodgers have everything going against the Padres this time. I think they beat the Padres, and I don't think it's even very close. I think they beat them pretty handily.
A lot of pressure on this Ohtani guy, huh? Wonder how we're going to write about him. How we're going to describe him if he doesn't hit.
Oh, there's a ton of pressure. I mean, this is why he came here. This is what he wanted. He wanted this. He asked for this. He left the Angels for this. This is what he wants. He's got it. Let's see what he does with it.
Hey, well, like on the Ohtani point, I think we've all seen the last couple of weeks, like what it looks like when it's going right, and the fact that he did handle at least the higher pressure of a division chase at the end of the season pretty well. What are you worried about with him going into his first October? Like, what are the things that if this goes wrong, like how does it go wrong? Because he has been so locked in lately, and it seems like he's the toughest out in baseball at the moment. So where could this go off the rails for him?
Well, Jack, you've seen him more than anybody. He struggled the second half of the season before the last month with runners in scoring position. He didn't do well in clutch hitting situations. And this is a whole nother level. For all we talk about him being an October type of player, he's never played in October before. This is his first time doing it. The whole stakes were so much higher. We just don't know. He's never done it before in this environment. I know the WBC was a big deal, but this is a bigger deal.
I could see a scenario, I guess, where the guys around him just don't respond at all. What makes him a little bit trickier than most guys is, you pitch around him, you get him on base, all of a sudden now he's on second base, right? And in the past, we've talked so much about how this offense is just kind of feast or famine, right? Either they hit home runs or they don't score at all. Well, he's kind of added like a different dimension, to their offense and gives them another way to score. But, that said, like if you kind of have to pick your poison, there are going to be situations, my guess is where they're going to probably pitch around him rather than pitch to him, take the home run out of the equation. And then it's going to be, up to Mookie, and I do think, for what it's worth, I think in these types of situations, like Betts has kind of stepped up to, right. He's kind of been, kind of that number 2 hitter that you want, right. I think he's taken it the right way, right. I mean, I assume as great as Ohtani is, I can't imagine he doesn't feel disrespected in some way. And you know what? He's responded to that.
Yeah, to 2 huge hits when Ohtani's been intentionally walked in front of him. Although, Dylan, I do appreciate how I asked how Ohtani could do bad, and you just said, well, it's the other guys.
Everybody else does bad, yeah.
Ohtani can do no wrong.
Well, I do think though that he's right. The way since moving him into, the leadoff position, and you got to keep in mind too. I think that baseball in Japan, like they're in terms of kind of like the way they think about the game and all the analytics stuff, they're still kind of in the Stone Age. And they do think in terms of, and he himself has talked about this, right? I'm the leadoff hitter. Like my job is to get on base. And I think that has kind of kept him within himself, right? He doesn't, I do think it has like had a shift in his focus. And I don't think he's going to kind of go through those stretches where he's just taking big wild swings and just striking out a bunch. I just don't see it.
Yeah. And getting to what Plaschke was asking earlier, like once he got to 50 home runs, his approach seemed to change. He said it didn't, but he became like a 600 hitter the last couple of weeks of the season. To Dylan's point, if the guys around him are struggling, I do think that is an interesting dynamic in which we could see Ohtani, because he's talked about this on the Angels. Part of why he did expand his strike zone and chase more pitches and have to kind of rewire himself in some ways this year to not do that as much is because he felt like if I didn't do that, we were not going to win. We were not going to produce runs. If I didn't make something happen when I was at the plate, we weren't going to score. And if he feels that way at all this year, and I think that's where the October mentality kind of comes in, like how much pressure does he feel, especially if the team's behind or whatever. That's where you can get him. Like if you can get Ohtani to chase outside the zone, you can get him out. Like that's why he struggled with runners in scoring position early in the year because he was expanding way too much. It was the same thing he did with the Angels, but that's a tough way to live when you're swinging at pitches outside the strike zone. And if he falls back into that habit again, that's where he falls in trouble in my eyes. Now, the good news is he set a career, or not a career low, but his lowest chase rate this year since 2020. And the last couple of weeks, it was even lower than it's been all season. So I think he is in about as good of a spot as you can be going into your first postseason, from the swing to the approach to the confidence. But yeah, for a team that has had other star players struggle, that's going to have Freddie Freeman at potentially, if not likely, less than 100% in this series. Does he feel the pressure to produce? And then how does that manifest in his play? And it could end up being really good. He could be, like unconscious and continue hitting 600 or whatever. But there's also a world in which he starts chasing and striking out. And if he starts struggling when other guys in the lineup aren't doing great, I think that could have a really detrimental mental momentum effect on the Dodgers in a series where you're going to be facing a lot of good pitching.
Yeah, for all their pitching problems the last 2 years, an equally big problem has been their offense in the postseason. I don't know how many runs they scored against Arizona last year, but it wasn't very many, and very few against the Padres. They averaged 2 runs a game, maybe. So Mookie Betts has got to me, all the questions are on Mookie, because Mookie's been here before and failed miserably. And if he fails, they don't have to pitch to Ohtani. That changes everything. I think Mookie, the pressure is probably more on Mookie than anybody.
You want to make a prediction on how he's going to do and how he's going to handle that pressure?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what his mindset is. I don't know how he handles the pressure. I just know he's done terribly the last 2 seasons. So I don't know what makes us think it'll be any different this time.
I think he's going to do something defensively big, and that's going to kind of get his postseason going. We've seen that before, right? In obviously 2020, 2021, when they beat the Giants, there's a big defensive play that he made. I think we're going to kind of see him do something defensively, and that's going to kind of get him going, as they make this run to the World Series.
I look at this situation Mookie's in this year as being a little different than the last 2, especially last year. The first thing is he's had like a weird regular season. He had the shortstop thing early on. He missed all that time with his broken hand. And by the time he got back the last couple months, think about last year. He was in an MVP chase. He was trying to get to 40 home runs. There was so much pressure, I think, that he was putting on himself, and was obviously feeling externally to perform to a certain level, to worry about his numbers, that it just put him in a bad place going into the playoffs. Like, this is a guy he said himself, like, is at his best when he can get lost in the process of different things. And this year, that's what he's done. He was in the process of trying to learn shortstop. He was in the process of trying to come back from an injury. And then late in the season, he was in the process of just trying to get his swing in the place that he wants. And overall, the numbers were pretty good up until really like the last week. And then even in there, he had some pretty big hits. I think the other thing is he has, acknowledged, after moving out of the leadoff spot and moving to right field, like, he's acknowledged pretty bluntly, even on Jimmy Kimmel last night, like, Shohei Ohtani is a better player than me. And while that might not always be like a great dynamic for two, like when you're the face of the team and then suddenly they bring in somebody who's, better than you and kind of displaces that part of your role, I think in some ways it could be good for Mookie. Like, this is a guy who, can get down on himself pretty quickly, can put a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And I think the fact that there is so much pressure or attention on Ohtani right now that, in some ways he is kind of like the guy of the big 3 people are going to be talking about the least amount coming into this series. I don't know. I just think that this is a different kind of setup for him, and one that, to me, has a better chance of him thriving in. Similar, like in 2020, it wasn't all on his shoulders. They had Corey Seager. They had some other star players. When the Red Sox won the World Series, obviously that team was loaded with talent beyond him, even if he was their best player. So I like the way this sets up for Mookie. But again, until we see it, it's going to be really hard to forget about the past 2 postseasons.
Now, do we like Dylan's favorite pitcher? Do we like him coming into the postseason now? He pitched 5 innings. in Colorado. How do you look, Jack?
I'll tell you, he looked better than Jack Flaherty's looked in the last couple starts, which
Mm.
to me, there's
Dylan's guy looks better than Plaschke.
No,
now like they've both been fine. Like neither of them have just stunk, coming into the playoffs, but neither of them have been great either. And one of the things I've been thinking about is, every indication is that Jack Flaherty is going to start game one and that Yamamoto is going to start game two. Yamamoto told Japanese reporters that Dave Roberts told him that himself, that he'll be going in game two. Do you guys like that? There is this part that by not doing Yamamoto 1 and Flaherty 2, like Yamamoto is not going to be available at all for game 5, whereas he could have been if he pitched game 1 because he needs the extra day of rest. So, I don't know if it's a huge deal, but it is something I've been thinking about the last couple of days is this the right way to line them up? And yeah, like who do you trust more if either of them right now?
yeah, it's the right way. Game one's a must win, if they, especially if they play the Padres and all the past history given the two teams. Game one's a must win. You need your ace out there. Flaherty's their ace.
Well, just because the guy's pitching game one doesn't make him an ace, Flash. I don't. They don't
Yeah,
have a. They don't like. Let's be honest. Like, they don't have an ace.
No.
Oh, he's their ace.
No, he's not their ace. He's just
Well, he's like the de facto ace.
right. Yeah. I mean, they need to. I think try to get through the series as quickly as possible. Right. I mean, you don't want this dragging into, game 4, game 5. That's going to get, yeah. I mean, the deeper they get into the series, I just think that it's going to, because at least if you can win game 1, right, that gives you leeway in game 2 to probably assuming Flaherty pitches reasonably deep into the game, gives you some flexibility with the bullpen. Then you have an off day coming in, I mean, So I think, to Plaschke's point, I do think game 1 is kind of a must win that game.
I've gone back and forth on this. I think Yamamoto's like his ceiling's a lot higher than Flaherty, and I have a hard time, not to riff off Dylan's column here, but I have a hard time imagining the Dodgers are making any sort of run unless Yamamoto's pretty darn good for the whole month. But that said, Jack Flaherty is a guy who has thrived in the postseason before, almost kind of Walker Buehler-esque, what he did with the Cardinals in 2019, helping them get to an NLCS. He has been, just more consistent. He's pitched more. He's gone deeper into games. I think he's just at a place where I see how it's easier to trust him. But, I do wonder, like, if this does get to a game 5 and you don't have Yamamoto ready, and if the bullpen's run down by then, like, I do think there's some cost to doing it this way. So while I understand the upside of this, it's a tricky decision and speaks to the fact that basically every pitching decision they're going to make in this postseason is going to be tricky because, like, you don't know. Like, they were experimenting with Landon Knack in this last series in Denver and using an opener in front of him. And, obviously you're going to have to decide how long you want Walker Buehler to go. They pulled him out probably earlier than he seemed to want to come out of that division clinching game the other day. So, and then there's a whole lot of decisions they're going to have to make in the bullpen where they don't even have a designated closer, even though I would expect Michael Kopech to get a lot of the ninth inning opportunities. It's tricky. So I'll kind of end here. Like, what is your confidence level in the pitching? Like, to me, this seems like if they at least have a chance if things fall into place to get enough pitching, which I don't know you could say. You definitely couldn't say it last year. I'm not even certain you could say it in 2022 because they didn't really have like a second guy beyond Julio Urias. Like, you're relying on a past his prime Clayton Kershaw at that point. So how do you feel about the staff? How likely is it these things fall into place? And is there a world where, like, they can, again, with the offense, like, just kind of get by preventing runs enough?
Yeah, I was confident in the pitching as I've been all season. Seriously, I hate to admit it, but when Yamamoto went 5 innings in Colorado, I said, well, this guy's got a chance to be okay. Their bullpen is a lot better than people think. It's a lot deeper than people think. I think right now they have enough pitching. Unless there's more injury, I think they have enough pitching to get by.
I wouldn't feel great about it if Ohtani wasn't on the team, right? I mean, I do think that they're going to kind of have to win. It's going to have to be a little bit higher scoring. They can't, they're not going to be winning a 2-1 game. I don't think. This is going to have to be. They're going to have to put up some runs. And again, like, as this thing goes along, I mean, we praised Dave Roberts, I think, for the job he's done getting this team through to this point, and rightfully so. But now it kind of gets to, right now it's real crunch time for him in terms of just how he manages his bullpen, because it's not going to be about just getting through these games either. You're going to have to kind of set yourself up long term and, winning one game here, which is always kind of the priority. You do have to win the game in front of you, but a win today could cost you 3 games down the road, just kind of the way they're set up. So I think, to me, it's kind of again, he's going to be, they've had just the front office with the way they've constructed these teams. They've been asked Dave to kind of walk the tightrope every October, and he's going to be walking that for sure again, this month.
All right. Well, I will save our full postseason predictions until we know who the Dodgers are playing. Does anyone want to go out on a limb and say we're going to be going back to the Battery in Atlanta next week?
No way.
No Braves love.
The Braves are done. They're cooked. They're too injured.
I think the universe has a way of working in mysterious ways, and I just have a feeling, that the Atlanta restaurant industry, aka the Waffle House, needs Plaschke to prop up their economy once more. So just for that reason,
just the Waffle House, not the sterilized strip mall too.
Well, it's basically, it's just a bunch of Waffle Houses there, right? Do they have another restaurant?
All I'd say instead will be in, what did you call the gas lamp district? A sewer?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll be in the sewer instead.
We'll be in the sewer, I think.
So, all right. Well, we'll be back before the start of the NLDS once we know who the Dodgers are playing. Until then, for Bill and Dylan, I'm Jack. Thanks for watching.